We'll now have a look at one of the main panels that we see within our user interface. I'm referring to this one down here, the Properties panel, and I say it's down here because by default this is where it's located. However, should you want to move it, remember how we did in the previous tutorials. All you would need to do is grab hold of it and then move it around somewhere else. I'm not actually going to do that because, to be honest, in the 10 years or so that I've been using Dreamweaver, I've never felt the need to actually relocate it somewhere else, or even to have it as a floating panel. But of course, that choice is yours. You can move it should you want to. As I say, I'm not going to. Now at the moment, because we haven't got any document open, this Properties panel is fairly redundant. We can't actually do anything with it. The Properties panel, as the name indicates, requires a document to be open first of all, and that document will contain certain properties. Whether that property is going to be a photograph, or some text, or some JavaScript, or some CSS, whatever, it does need a document open. Therefore, I'm going to go to my Open a Recent Item list here, this column on the left, and then I'm going to select this top item. And this immediately opens up this document, of course. At the moment, don't worry too much about what we see here. This is a page that we're going to start building in the next chapter. Presently, in this chapter, you aren't going to find any project files for this. It's simply here at the moment for illustration. That said, let's have a quick look at this site in what's known as Live View so we can see how this connects with our Properties panel. I'll click on this button here, Live, and over the next couple of tutorials, by the way, we will be looking at these options here, Code, Split, Design and Live. For the moment, just bear with me. Therefore, with Live View in focus, we now see a fairly good approximation of what our site will look like when we eventually upload it to a server. You'll see my navigation down here on the left. Well, these rollovers work, and we'll see a main photograph here. Now I'm just using my scroll wheel on my mouse to move down the page. If you don't have a scroll wheel, use the vertical slider at the right there. Okay, and we also see some navigation buttons down here too. And predominantly the page is made up of 3 or 4 different elements: text, navigation, photographs, and any related CSS. In fact, I'll just grab my vertical slider to navigate back up to the top of the page, and I'll disengage our Live View by clicking on Live once more. Right then, let's work our way down to our Properties panel again. You might remember from an earlier tutorial that I mentioned pretty much every single website you see these days is comprised of 2 components, HTML and CSS. And this Properties panel allows us to investigate either the HTML or the CSS of various different assets, or various different elements, shall we say, on our particular web page. So these 2 switchable buttons, HTML and CSS, and we'll just look at the HTML first of all. These 2 buttons, in practical purposes, have a dual role. One, so that we can inspect a particular asset or a particular element and see at a glance here what that particular element's properties are. And then the second part of this is, should we want to change anything, then we can quickly do it from within here. And as you can see, this HTML properties side of the panel has various different fields that display particular properties, but also, should we want to change anything, class here, for example, is set to container, but if I click on that drop reveal arrow there, then you can see this calls up this dialog, allowing me to change my class should I want to. I'm not going to, but you can see the principle there. Additionally, if you want to provide a link to a particular component on your page, a photograph or some text, then you can do it with this link field. And in actual fact, this link field has 3 ways of doing this. You could either use the drop reveal here, and then that would allow you to link to anything that it shows. Just to the right, we have what's known as a pick whip, which we'll get to a little bit later on. And also just to the right of that is a folder button icon, and that also allows us to navigate somewhere on our drive so that we can link whatever element we are looking at. You'll also notice we have some buttons here, and these allow us to alter the way text appears on our screen. We could either make the text bold or change it to italics. And then moving to the right, we have a further 4 buttons. Clicking on this one would allow us to create what's known as an unordered list. Or, if we prefer, just to the right of that, we could create an ordered list. This button to the right again allows us, well, as we can see by the tooltip, this allows us to remove any block quotes. And related to this, just to the right again, this 4th button allows us to insert a block quote. All of this is going to make more sense as we progress, and certainly more so within the next couple of chapters. For the moment, I'm just showing you where things are within this tutorial, and in fact for the whole of this chapter. By the way, you might have noticed this list here, just above our Properties panel. You can see these different tags, and these tags are associated with the various different components that comprise to make this particular page at the moment. For example, if I go to the far left one here, Body, well, this is now selecting everything on our page that's embedded within this body tag, i.e. everything, which means if I want to alter our background colour from what it's at the moment, this sort of slate grey, well, by coming down to the Properties panel once more and clicking on this button, Page Properties, well, this resulting Page Properties dialog opens up. And if I come down to this field here, Background Colour, well, you can see here in this small square that this is the actual colour being used for our background. And just to the right in that field is the hexadecimal number that refers exactly to this particular colour, or this shade, I suppose I should say, with it being grey. And therefore you can see then, by using our Properties panel and then using that Page Properties button to open up this dialog, then should I want to change my background colour, well, I could click in this square first of all, and now you'll see in this larger square the actual colour that we are using. That circle there indicates our shade, and in fact down here you'll see our hexadecimal number once more. Now I'm actually going to copy this so that when I change our colour in a second I can paste this back in easily. So I'm going to select it all and then right click on it and run down to copy, which now means if I move my circle over here somewhere more towards this pinkish red, then I can deselect by clicking here. You'll notice my background colour has been updated, and then simply, if I hit apply, there you go, my background colour instantly changes to this pinkish red. Now I don't really want it to be that colour, so I'll highlight my hexadecimal number here once more in this background colour field, and then right click and simply run down to paste. And this now replaces our hexadecimal colour for that pink back to our grey. It won't take effect until I hit apply, so I'll do that now, and then I'll hit OK. Right, we're back to where we started. So that's a very simple visual thing that we can do by using our Properties panel. Now I'll just scroll back up to the top of the page by using my scroll wheel once more, and then move down to the related Properties panel option, CSS. I'll click on the CSS button now, and then as you can see within our Properties panel, the available functions do change, and as you can see, immediately our Properties panel updates to offer different functions available solely with the CSS button. And as an example, if I come up to this text here, where it says Stockton Heath, the little village with the big heart, well, if I select somewhere within this text, then down within my CSS properties, you can see that if I want to change its font, well, I can do by coming down to this font field. Or possibly, if I want to change the font size, well, I could do that here. Alternatively, if I want to change the property for the colour, then I can do that here. And this works in a very similar way to what we've just seen looking at the Properties panel within the HTML section. Noticing as I do roll over any of these particular options, then we'll see a tooltip informing us what this particular function will allow us to do. For example, with this colour box, we can see that the property colour is inherited from the rule body. And remember we clicked on that rule for body a few moments ago? And then just up here, you can see that we can align our text either to the left, centrally, to the right, or we can justify it. Okay then, and pretty much that's it. That's what we can do with our Properties panel. However, just before I finish, do notice at the far right here that we do have 2 or 3 extra options. For example, if I click on here, then you can see I can either call up a help file, or we could close our Properties panel, or if we want to, we could close this tab group. Now speaking of the help file, if you clicked on this question mark here, then that would also open up your Dreamweaver help file. And also, related to tags that we spoke about a few minutes ago, if you want to open up what's known as a quick tag editor, then you would click on here. Okay, now once more, I'm going to leave this. We'll get back to this as necessary as we progress building our site. And then finally, there is one more thing I want to look at, and it's right down here at the bottom right of our Properties panel. At the moment our Properties panel takes on all this space at the foot of our screen, but if you want to collapse it so that it doesn't take on so much space, well, you can see that sort of thin grey horizontal division line there. If I click on here, this now reduces the Properties footprint to pretty much half size. I'll click on it again to reveal it, and essentially what's happening is anything below this division line, i.e. this Page Properties button, is now taken from view, possibly because you might not always use this Page Properties button, and therefore you want to reclaim a little bit more screen real estate. Now this works in parallel with the HTML button too. If I select it, then we still have this half view, shall we call it, and should I want to expand it, then of course I need to click on here once more. Okay, so that's a quick run through then of where this properties panel is and what it can do for us.